Jai Hind, a great good morning to all. I, Smith Singh, present in front of you with a new question, as you already seen in the title. The question is, examine the fact-value dichotomy in political science. To what extent has the post-behavioralism resolved the conflict in the dichotomy? Actually, the question is asking the difference between the empirical or normative approach to study the politics, because one's rely on the fact and other on the values, and what are the difference between these two, and how these two differences lead to a conflict in the study or approaching or in studying the political science, and to what extent after the new behavioralism or the post-behavioralism try to solve these two fact-value dichotomy or the conflict. So let us start, and there were a structure, intro, body and conclusion. You may write. I am going to present you a model answer. Is that clear? Examine the fact-value dichotomy in political science. To what extent has the post-behavioralism resolved the conflict in the dichotomy? These are the model answer as an example form. You may write even the best out of the best. So let us start. It is written or presented by me, Sumit Kumar. So we can write the answer in this form, like the first, we have to understand what is fact-value dichotomy. It is actually the difference between the empirical and normative approach to study the politics, where the empirical approaches relies on fact and the normative approaches based on values. Contemporary political science give prominence to empirical approaches, and traditional study of politics was dominated by normative approach. Here we are going to point out major distinction between the empirical and normative approach. Broadly speaking, the empirical approach seeks to discover and describe facts, whereas the normative approach seeks to determine and prescribes values. The empirical approach aims at making an empirical statement which is concerned with is, whereas the normative approach aims at making a normative statement which is concerned with what ought to be or should be. The crucial point is that an empirical statement is concerned with a situation which can be observed by our sense experience, which can be verified by repeated observation, and whose accuracy can be tested. On the other hand, a normative statement tend to express preferences for a particular type of order as dictated by a sense of duty or a universal need, or by the commitment to a moral principle or ideal. A normative statement requires something to be done in order to serve an intrinsic value, which is an end in itself. For example, the truth, the good, the beautiful. On the other hand, an empirical statement requiring something to be done is intended to serve an instrumental value, which is means to some higher ends, that is regular exercise to improve your health, or grow more trees to reduce environmental pollution. It is the content of a statement and not its form which makes it empirical or normative. Critics of the normative approach urge that the empirical approach is its objective, whereas the normative approach is subjective. T.D. Weldon, in his Vocabulary of Politics in 1953, pointed out that political philosophy is like a matter of tests. One can only state one test and go away. There is no point in arguing. This is the best view. While there may exist several schools of thoughts upholding different interpretations of, say, freedom, equality, and justice, a dialogue between these schools can always be opened. Those holding different viewpoints can always come together to evolve or arrive at certain basic principles of reasoning by which they can prove or disprove different points. It is not like a matter of individual test which can be stated but which can not be defended. The terminology adopted by empirical and normative approaches for approval or disapproval of any proposition creates confusion at times, the categories true or false, right or wrong may be different meaning in the context of the same mathematical and moral questions. It is sometimes assumed that the empirical approach refers to a true or false, right or wrong, or as absolute categories, while normative approach treats them as conditionals. However, it is now widely accepted that even scientific principles are largely tentative. Nobody can claim to have found the final truth in the realm of matter, not to speak in the realm of mind. Scientific principles in the sphere of nature as well as society can be treated as valid until they are repudiated by some new discovery. In politics, particularly, we cannot afford to abstain from acting until a very high level of scientific validity is achieved. As Robert Hall has rightly pointed out, in politics, refusing to decide is simply deciding to allow others to decide for you. The champions of empirical approach have been very vocal in criticizing the normative approach on the ground that there is no scientifically valid or reliable methods of determining what is morally right or wrong. The supporters of the normative approach do not condemn the empirical approach as such, but they criticize its differences towards values as such, particularly in its ignorance of discrimination between the higher and the lower values. The state of estrangement between the empirical and the normative approaches, wherever it exists, will prove disastrous. There is an urgent need to build a bridge between the two approaches, which will be beneficial not only for their respective upholders but also for the human civilization itself. By the mid-1960s, behavioralism gained a dominant position in the methodology of the political science. However, its critics like Leo Strauss in What is Political Philosophy? Journals of Politics in 1957 started arguing that the rise of the behavioralism was symptomatic of a crisis in the political theory because of its failure to come to grips with normative issues. In 1969, David Stern himself, in his presidential address, the American Political Science Association, announced a new revolution in political science, a post-behavioral revolution that represented a shift of the focus from strict methodological issues to a greater concern with the public responsibilities of the discipline and with the political problems. Relevance and actions were the twin of slogans of post-behavioralism. It represented the complete departure from the behavioralism. Rather, it stood for consolidating its gain and applying them for problem solving and crisis management. Stern emphatically drew attention of contemporary political scientists to the impending threat of the nuclear bombs and the inner conflict within the US, which might lead to a civil war or dictatorship and undared war in Vietnam, which was perpetuating moral consciousness of the world over. He lamented that the behavioral political scientists were taking refuge in their ivory tower, seeking to perfect their methodology as if they were not at all warned with the outside world. Stern warned that if they failed to play this role, they would be reduced to mere technicians or the machines for tinkering with security. Stern concluded that the scientists would adopt a rational interest in the value constructions and application without denying the validity of their science. He laid more stress on the public responsibilities of this discipline. The tenets of the post-behavioralism included the following. The first, substance preceded techniques, which meant the pressing problems of society become a tool of investigations. The second, behavioralism itself was seen as ideologically conservative and limited to abstractions rather than the reality of the times and the crisis. Now, point number 3. The science could be evaluatively neutral for the fact were inseparable from the values, and values promises had to be related to knowledge. Point number 4, intellectuals have to shoulder the responsibility of their society defended human values of civilization and not become mere technician insular to social problems. The intellectual had to put knowledge to work and engage in reshaping society. Intellectual must actively participate in the politicizations of the professions and academic institutions. At last but not the least, in conclusion, we can put post-behavioralism seek to reintroduce a concern for values in the behavioral approach itself. In another word, you can say that it is a synthesis of both the empirical approach, the fact, and the normative approach, the values. It solves the problems, conflict, and value, fact-value dichotomy. Is that clear? So these are the model answer which is presented by me. It is nearest to perfect, not perfect. You may write perfect answer according to your own perspective, own vision, your own answer writing qualities. So that's all, and if you are the first time on my channel, then like it, share it, as well as subscribe it. Also press the bell icon, and if there were any queries, comments, suggestion, advice, you may comment in the comment box. Thank you once again. Have a great day.